growing up, what sort of music were you listening to? What sort of bands did you like?
I grew up in a little West London town, Shepherd's Bush, and it was a typical sort of multiracial area back in those days. And my life as a youngster, going into teenagerhood, was pretty cool. But I found myself liking music which was against the grain to all the people who I used to go to school with and stuff. Because black kids back in those days were supposed to like reggae and such like. But I don't know how it happened. I can't remember, to be honest. But I got into rock music, and my entry into listening to rock music was basically Jimi Hendrix. And I started listening to Jimi Hendrix when I was young, and I'd pore over album sleeves and just sort of dream that I would be in a band with him. And I sort of started from there. But I started sort of dabbling with musical instruments from the age of about I should say sort of 5, 6. My father, who passed away when I was 6 years old, he bought me a piano, and I kind of plonked on that for about 10 minutes and decided I didn't like it. And I didn't really kind of look at any sort of instrumental playing until I was about 10. And that sort of corresponded with my liking of rock music. But I wasn't supposed to like rock music, if you understand what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
Culturally I wasn't supposed to. But I found that my musical tastes were quite wide and varied, even within the sort of society that I was living in. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I actually sort of ended up joining a rock band as such. But I'd also had an upbringing with my cousin who was in the army, and he was a bit of a singer, and they had a soul band whilst they were in the forces, and he took me over to Germany, where they were sort of posted at the time, and went over there to do some gigs with them, and I stayed out there for 3 months, and sort of plonking a bass, because I'd learned how to sort of play it at that time. So again, because it was soul music, I had a real sort of liking and a kind of wanting to sort of be soul-y, but I still had this nagging thing about rock music. So I had a sort of an eclectic introduction to the world of music.
And were your family, when you decided to go into music, were your family quite supportive about it? Or did they want you to...
My father was a musician.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, he was a trumpet player in the island of Dominica, where we originated from. And he was kind of regarded as the pop star on the island, the equivalent. And my mum was sort of a follower of him, and they ended up marrying, and they had my brother, and then it was about the time of the Windrush episode, and my father got involved in that, bringing my mum over with him to England, but she was pregnant with me at the time, so that's why I was born in England. And so I've had music in me. My father died, as I said, when I was 6 years old, but we'd already kind of discovered that I had a musical intention, and I sort of just went from there.
Okay, and on the air, how did all that come about?
Well, basically, when I was at secondary school, I kind of started learning how to play bass because of my music teacher, a guy called Ken Williams, who's a fantastic guy, Welshman, and he sort of asked us, if we were to play musical instruments, what would we like to play? And it just so happened the previous night I was watching Top of the Pops, and there was this band called Norman Greenbaum playing a song called Spirit in the Sky.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
And the camera sort of did a close-up on a Fender jazz bass, and I sort of looked at it in wonderment and amazement, and I sort of said, I want one of those, I want to play one of those. And when my teacher asked me, what instruments would I like to play, I immediately said, I'd like to try the bass. So he got hold of a bass guitar, and I was able to sort of learn and practice from there. But at the same time, my cousin managed to get hold of a bass for me that a colleague of his made in Germany, which was basically made out of a piece of wood for the neck, and the body was actually paper mache. And it was all painted up, and it was held together. It was all sticky stuff, and the day I started sort of whacking it and playing it, sweating all over it, just disintegrated. So, I was quite happy that I had something at my school that I could play. So, the introduction was quite benign, but I then went on to sort of, one of my school friends said that he's got some friends who are looking to put a band together. And I said, yeah, fine, I'd like to sort of, again, I'm about 13 years old at this time. And so I went round to this house in Ealing Common, West London, and I knocked on the door, and this old, sort of dishevelled lady answered the door and accused me of being a drug dealer and told me to fuck off. And I said, no, I'm here to audition because I was asked by, and then she apologised and I got let in. And I met the kids who formulated sort of the band on the air. I met Simon Townsend, because the lady I met was Betty Townsend, Pete Townsend's mum.
Oh, right.
Simon was Pete's younger brother, and there was an older brother who's about my age called Paul. So I sort of got involved in that crowd, and we started sort of developing this band thing, and I was well into the Kippian sort of a prog rock, as it might have been called back in those days. And the flavour of the day was bands like Genesis and stuff, and we wanted to sort of be like them because we wanted to make intelligent music. We weren't into the 3-minute ditties that were sort of was part of the music scene at the time, particularly popular mainstream. And we classed ourselves as really proper musicians playing proper music, and On the Air was all about that. And we kind of started off in that fashion, and after a year or two, we started stripping back. We were a 5-piece, and after about 2 years, we became a 3-piece, and that's when On the Air was born. The band name before that was Clear Blue Sky.
Ah, I see.
So the band then went on to being on the Air, and then past On the Air, it became a Simon Townsend band, because Simon Townsend himself started getting some interest from record companies far and wide, and so from being a sort of autonomous group, we then became Simon Townsend's backing band, of which we didn't like very much, because we didn't like the idea of it being we're trading on the name Townsend. And Simon, to be honest, he didn't really want to do it, but he had no option, because that's the way that his parents promoted him. Particularly his brother was quite part of that input. But Pete sort of saw us as a new band struggling along, and he gave us opportunities to develop. On one occasion, he invited us to his studio at Goring-on-Thames, and he just installed a quadraphonic system. And we were the first band to record using quadraphonic recording methods. So that was a sort of nice thing. But it was also great hanging out at Pete's house, because it was just a shrine to the Who and gold discs and all this, gold platinum discs, a lot of stuff. And it was all very integral to my idea of what music was, or rock and roll. And it's something that I very much wanted to be involved with. So my association with Simon sort of went on with On the Air. So we went from On the Air to the Simon Townsend band, but then we went back to being On the Air because we had we finally got our own record deal with WA Records, and we recorded a single with a producer called John Burns, who was at one time Genesis producer. He produced Land Lies Down, I think. So us having Genesis producer, we thought we were really smart. We thought we were very cutting edge, and we thought that we were all great. And we recorded a couple of bits and pieces, and then we had a guy who was basically a friend of all of manager, and he managed to get us signed up to a tour with a band called the Skids, which I hadn't really known much about, and because of the nature of our group, we weren't really part of the sort of the new wave, as it was called, because that was beneath us, which was a bit weird. But our introduction to the Skids was really important, because we looked at ourselves differently, because they themselves were something really different. They were unaffected by anything apart from what they did. So rather than being the sort of a Genesis influence band, we really turned into sort of a three-piece with a more aggressive rock pop attitude. And our first single, Ready for Action, on WA Records was released, and it was kind of weird. Mark had joined us by this time, because we'd been through various drummers throughout the different incantations, but we needed a drummer, and we held some auditions at Shepperton Studios, which who owned at the time, and that's where Mark came into the picture. So
how did he differ from the other drummers?
Sorry?
How did Mark differ from the other drummers?
He was brilliant. Mark, we held the auditions, as I said, at Shepperton Studios. We had about 5 or 10 drummers turn up for the audition, because we've got an advert, Melody Maker. And we were asking for sort of a Phil Collins Genesis, Phil Collins, Bill Bruford type drummer. And Mark had sort of wangled himself to sort of be the last one to be auditioned. And what we didn't know at the time, he was earwigging what the others were doing in the songs we were playing. So by the time he came in, he was shit hot. It's as if he'd known the songs previously, and he was just the best drummer. And we took him on from there. And that's where my relationship with Mark sort of started. And we're still friends to this day.
So how did you, when you first met Stuart Adamson, when you were touring with the Skids, did you hit it off with him immediately?
Well, I remember the first night of the tour with purely and simply because it was just so awesome, and it was awesome for sort of a few different reasons. We sort of turned up the gig. It was the Leicester Polytechnic, or the De Montfort Hall, I think it was. And we turned up, and I walked into the hall, and I was, we were all kind of really excited. We're going to do this gig. We're going to meet this band that we didn't know anything about. And there was a guy sort of fiddling with bass guitars on the stage, and I ran up to him and said, "Hey, we're the support act. Where are we supposed to be?" And this rather angry, Scottish-toned person turned around and said, "Get out of my fucking way." and that person was actually, I found out subsequently, was Russell Webb.
Right.
Skids bass player at the time. And I think we finally introduced ourselves, and they let us have a sound check, which was nice of them. And we did our gig very nervously, but it was on watching the Skids after our show that I kind of really noticed Stuart. I thought he was an awesome guitarist. I thought it was incredibly unique in his guitar playing. I loved the songs that I was hearing from the Skids. I didn't particularly like the vocalist because I couldn't understand the word he was saying. And I didn't really take much note of the rest of the group, purely and simply because Stuart was loomed so large in my head. It was just fantastic. So as the tour went on, I sort of made sure I got to know him a bit. And he was a very quiet sort of chap who I learned was very much into practical jokes. And we experienced a few of his practical jokes, but we sort of got on throughout the tour. But he seemed to be the sort of the quiet, contemplative one. Where the others are sort of a bit more sort of openly, sort of not punky, new wave, aggressively, particularly Jobson, who I didn't really take to at the time because we just didn't have anything in common. Russell, obviously I got to know because he was the bass player and I was the bass player. So we spent about 2 or 3 weeks touring around and it was a great atmosphere. I remember sort of talking to Stuart and saying, look, if you ever need a rhythm section, myself and Mark would be probably available, because as on the air, we weren't sort of really that's not, we weren't getting on, but I realised that Simon was being set up again to be a solo artist, and he got himself, that somebody got him a deal with Warner Brothers on his own. So I thought, well, the band's going to come to an end, so I might as well start hunting for something else. And then, the whole sort of 18 months later, got a call from Ian Grant saying, we'd like to come down to Phonogram Studios and do some stuff. And I sort of cheekily said, yeah, how much are we getting paid? And he told me to fuck off. Anyway, Mark and I duly turned up at Phonogram Studios in London, and it was just awesome. We sort of set up, we got to hear the songs that we're going to be demoing, and it was very different. The big shock was meeting Bruce, because I just could not understand a word he was saying. That was so strong. Still, I got used to it, but Bruce was a different entity. So I didn't really talk to Bruce much because I didn't understand fucking what he was saying. So, when we finished the demo, I was trembling because everything sounded so great, and we learned this song called Heart and Soul. The bass line was absolutely fantastic, and the guitars were sort of the only thing that really sort of didn't think was quite right at the time was Stuart's vocal. Didn't sound like he didn't sound like a singer at the time. But I just knew that this was something that we needed to get involved with. And during the session, Ian Grant was sort of hanging out whilst recording, and then this guy from the record company upstairs came down and had a listen, and he was just sitting there, and he had a huge smile on his face. And I asked Stuart who he was, and he said, his name was Chris Briggs, and he's the A&R man for Phonogram at the time. Anyway, so when we sort of finished recording the backing tracks, and Stuart Briggs got on with some guitar overdubs, I sort of got to learn who these people were, and sort of pick their brains about what it is we're actually doing, what was the prospect. And when we were sitting down mixing the demos, which was being recorded by a chap called John Brand,
Alright.
who he's subsequently ended up being the manager of Stereophonics.
Alright, okay.
Yeah, so we're all sitting there listening to the playback to the songs, and Ian had a huge smile on his face, Chris Briggs had an even bigger smile on his face, and by the end of the session, we had a record deal.
Brilliant.
We signed this on the spot. So, the weird thing is, driving home after the session, we didn't get paid, by the way. Driving home from the session, I sort of said to Mark, I think we're onto something here. But Mark was sort of very apprehensive. Mark was a drummer. He's married to his drums. Drums mean everything. He loves playing drums with whoever wants him to play drums. And I had to sort of coerce him over the following period. It was about 3 weeks before we actually got together with anybody again. To get Mark to agree to sign the record contract, of which he didn't at first, but even then, I think, with the threatened violence towards from the rest of us, he acquiesced, and that's it. We were on our way as a big country. But that was a bit of a bollockage for me as well, because just before we got together, sort of start rehearsing and stuff, I got asked to do a demo. I got asked to do recording. I had to, I had to go and do a session with this group called The Pretenders, which I absolutely adored. We went in and we recorded Back on the Chain Gang.
Oh, yeah.
The reason why I sort of did that is because of my association with Chris Thomas, who was the producer. Because I sort of, in between done a couple of Townsend albums. And I was asked if I wanted to entertain joining The Pretenders. And I said to Chrissy that, I'm just about to start off with this new band and I'm really into it. I'd love to be your bass player, but I've committed to these guys, and that was it. That's how I got on.
Okay. Big Country, I mean, for me, growing up in the 80s, it seemed to come out of nowhere. It was sort of instant success, you know, 1 minute I'd never heard of them, next minute they were everywhere. Was it really like that, though? Was it, you know?
It was.
Yeah.
It was exactly like that. I mean, my recollection of the time was sort of fading, but we spent about, number one, the guys came down to Scotland and lived at my house in West Ealing. And so we were writing songs, we were demoing ideas there, and then we went to rehearsals. And next minute we were playing gigs, and before we were on tour, and then we were on bloody some of the pubs. It was all within like 6 to 10 months. It was just extraordinary. I mean, it just took off, and we were all quite bewildered. I think Stuart was a bit bewildered as well, because although he'd known success with the Skids, I don't think he really sort of understood it with us, and obviously it was a complete novelty to the rest of us, you know, people being interested in what we were doing and wanting to buy records and shit. That was really kind of
So what was the music writing like inside the band? Did you all have input?
To start off with, we was just working on material that Stuart and Bruce had sort of put together, and then we started sort of looking at. I think the first song that we started looking at as a unit, rather than just sort of learning stuff that Bruce and Stuart had done, was because of my and Mark's background, the Crossing was like the nearest thing to what we had known as musicians, because of the sort of the elongated sort of nature of the song, a song that had different parts, different rhythms, quite polyrhythmic, and they're quite extended, and that's where Mark and I had come from in terms of music, and that really sort of got us into a sort of state of mind of everybody really sort of getting involved in the creation of new music. We hadn't sort of started writing songs at that time. It was over a period of time, and particularly when we started recording The Crossing, that was when we were starting to sort of think that we could have a lot more input songwriting wise, but still the mainstay of the writing at that time. And as the rest of The Crossing sort of shows, it's very much Stuart and Bruce who were the sort of writing driving forces. But as we grew as a band, that sort of started sort of panning across the whole of us. And I think by the time we got to the sea specifically, we were really, all of us were sort of putting up ideas for songs to work on, and Stuart was really good like that. He'd listen to other ideas, but I kind of made it. I felt very strongly that Stuart should always write the lyrics, release the singer, because I had to sing that the singer will sing the songs better. And Stuart worked really hard in developing his singing throughout the Crossing period. So that's how that all came on.
Well, Steel Tone, the album Steel Tone, that had a much different sort of atmosphere to the Crossing, wasn't it? Was that deliberate? Were you trying to get away from the rockier sound of before? Were you trying, just trying to do something a little bit different?
No, I think. Well, consciously we knew we wanted to write an album that was like The Crossing Part 2. But I think it was the atmosphere and the temperature at the time. Everything was quite glum, and everything there didn't seem to be much sort of happiness and about anything in life. Particularly, myself and Mark were spending so much time in Scotland. I think we really felt the political scenario of the time. Everything was down, dowdy, grey, and it's weird. And then we ended up when we went to sort of start retuning the songs. We were somewhere in the south coast. I can't remember the name of the studios, but it was everything. The atmosphere changed the band, I think, and also the one thing with the band that I certainly didn't case for is that after 2 years of bashing at The Crossing, touring around the world basically, we were all fucked completely. We were tired, and then we had to go and start working on a new album, and that was a real chore, I think, for all of us. And I think that's why the album took on that sort of grey complexion. And recording because we recorded it at the Polar Studios, which belonged to Bjorn and Benny from ABBA.
Oh yeah.
You know, the whole sort of grey atmosphere continued in there because it was a very strange place for us to be recording. And so, but I'd also really gave myself and Mark an opportunity to really kind of expand in terms of what we played and arrangements and stuff like that. You know, I think there was a real sort of knitting together of what was going to be the big country sound post the crossing. And it kind of worked, but there was a sort of a weird atmosphere about it, and there was certainly a tired aspect. Stuart was, you know, he by the time we sort of finished, you know, touring for the crossing, he was just wasted. He was empty, I think. So going back into the studio to start writing and rehearsing new stuff, I think it was a bit too soon for us. And the effect was, I think, what Steeltown sort of delivers in terms of atmosphere. It's grey, it's hard, it's you know, it's a band getting into a great recording studio, using every facility that has passed of it. You know, why do 5 overdubs when you can do 20?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a hell of an album for Steve anyway to mix, because it was quite dense in lots of places. But it was the first time that not so much for Mark, but myself, getting sort of songwriting ideas into that record, and that was great. That was the band growing. As I say, it wasn't until the year until we kind of, I think, had a rest, and then by the time we went into writing for that, there was a real sort of relaxed atmosphere. So it was a torrid sort of 2-3 years, absolutely mental. I mean, as I say, we just, from a recording studio in London, putting together. And also, don't forget, our first attempt at recording the crossing failed because we had Chris Thomas, who really didn't identify with the Scotsman at all. And Chris Briggs was magnanimous enough to sort of say, right, we'll scrap that, we'll start again. And that's when we got hold of Steve Lillywhite. So,
okay.
And that's how our relationship formulated with him, and he was perfect for that, absolutely perfect.
Were you, because I was always a bit shocked that you never, I mean, you had some hits in America, but you never really cracked the market. And to me, I mean, you were the ideal band to crack America, I thought. I mean, you had everything that you had a sort of a tiny bit of a country sound, but you were really rocky as well. And that to me would be ideal, but it never really took off, did it, in America?
Well, it didn't take off, pure and simply. Stuart was very difficult to deal with at that time. We knew that we had an opportunity to go and break America. I mean, obviously, U2 did Red Rocks somewhere around that time, and it really opened the door. But I think Stuart's problems were really sort of starting to manifest around that time, and you know, he would go missing, couldn't be contacted, blah blah blah. So you know, anything that the management were trying to organise ended up sort of being thwarted, because I just think after crossing, after Steeltown, you know, Stuart's problems were being really exacerbated by then, and he basically didn't give us an opportunity to go to America and do what we needed. I mean, we spent so long in America on the crossing, and the Americans didn't really take to Steeltown. There for us to sort of hammer home, it just didn't happen. And yes, it's a regret that we didn't sort of take up, or Stuart didn't rise to the opportunity to sort of really hammer what we as a band should have done in America.
What do you think contributed to Stuart's problems? Was it just the pressure, do you think, or?
Pressure, alcohol. I don't think he didn't, although he was the lead in the front line, I don't think he didn't enjoy it. He didn't relish being, you know, in that position. He just wanted to be a writer and a singer and play his guitar. He didn't like what went with it. He didn't like the cult of the personality. Cult of personality was not him at all. He didn't. Yeah, he loved being on stage. He loved playing, but all the rest of the stuff, he balked at that completely. yeah, and his problems, personal problems, alcohol problems, they all started to, really develop. Between the end of the crossing and I think up to the fear. But by the time we got to the fear, he was a bit more with it, and we were writing really good stuff, blah blah blah. But we then started having record company problems by that time. So again, another aggravating issue.
So what happened with the record companies? What was causing the problems there?
Well, it was to do with the A&R. Chris Briggs was the original A&R. Chris was very supportive. He supported us through the whole sort of Polar Studios, Sweden recording Steeltown. But he then subsequently left. So we were taken over by a chap called Dave Bates, who made his name as an A&R man, bringing Tears for Fears to the world. And he was a copy bastard who really thought that he was the bee's knees and we hated him. We had nothing in common with him. And our relationship, didn't just break down, it completely cracked up because he did things like for other people to mix stuff that we just recorded. But with the Thea, we were being produced by Robin Miller, who's a lovely man. In fact, he's produced Sade before, that was part of his track record. Didn't really seem to matter, and he really brought a sort of different and poppy element. But by the time we finished recording it, we were back on the road, and then we were being sent pictures, which sounded great, and also we were told, literally while on a bus driving from A to B in Europe, that he had been sacked and they drafted in some guy that we didn't know to mix the album. This guy was called Walter Talbot. And then we started hearing all these horror stories that he was replacing guitars, getting other people to do guitar overdubs and stuff, and the whole thing just really fell apart. It was awful. So feeling, and it's frustrating for us because we were on the road. So, sort of saying relations were strained as well. It was just horrible. And so that really put a sort of sour taste in our mouth about the SEA period. So, and our relationship didn't last much longer after that.
Right. Were you frustrated? You did sort of evolve over time into different sounds, but there was a sort of a media thing where they kept going on about all the big country records sounded the same. I think Mark was on record of saying that you can't really win because if you try something very different, then you get criticised for not sounding like big country, and if you don't, then it's another big country single that sounds exactly the same as the rest. Did you ever find that?
I would agree with that completely because you strive to be creative. You strive to sort of move yourself forward as an individual, as a writer, in life in general, and you try to sort of do what you do best. But I think that we fell into the trap of having such a defined sound. Then Mark's comments were completely and utterly pertinent because if you did the same thing, you get chipped for that, and if you try something different, if you didn't sound like what you originally sounded like, you're not part of the game anymore. So that was a struggle. But at the end of the day, we were happier trying to be creative. We're happier trying to be what we were as a group. Stuart had this underlying ambition to really become a country writer and country and western singer. And that's kind of, I don't know about the other guys in the group, but I really didn't like that prospect. I'm not a country and western fan. I don't particularly have an affinity for that type of music, but Stuart was brought up with it, so I can understand that's where his sort of leanings and intentions were to be. And I even thought from way back at the SEA time that sometime he will go off and do a solo album, which will be sort of the music he really wants to do. But it all became part of the collapsing of the band on a mental, physical, and emotional level. And I embrace really like the idea of being a rock band. We saw ourselves as a loud guitar rock band. Stuart's affinities country western. Mark just wanted to be Phil Collins and Bill Bruford as a drummer. And I think, I would say we started drifting apart there. All the pressures surrounding it began to encroach big time, and particularly the alcohol. That was the biggest problem, because just about, I think it was just before we started recording the Seer, both Stuart and Bruce declared that they were alcoholics and they were attending AA and stuff like that. We wanted to support, myself and Mark wanted to support them as much as we could, and it's sort of, because we were all firm friends at this time. You need to support people.
Yeah.
But it certainly had a bearing on how we were going to be as humans and how we were going to be as a band, which is why that whole sort of period became really quite difficult. I mean, after the Seer finished, after we'd sort of working out, it didn't feel complete because we weren't doing as much work as say we did on Skids or Crossing. So I think it's fair to say that maybe things start to sort of dissipate, but not completely. We're getting into territory now that my mind is completely flavoured now. I've forgotten a lot of stuff, particularly that intervening years between, say, the Seer and the Butler Skinners. But it was about time with the Butler Skinners, I wanted to be a rock band. I wanted us to be playing driving music that people loved. Not particularly angelic music, but just good guitar music. And when we went to do that, we lost Mark for personal various reasons. So we ended up recording with a drummer that I just thought was absolutely magnificent. When his name evades me, so I'll remember it in a second.
Okay, no problem. So in terms of how the band, towards the end of the band, when Stuart finally, his final time he went missing, that must have been a terrible time for everyone.
It was awful because we didn't know what was wrong. We all kind of surmised what was wrong. It was when we were recording Driving to Damascus. We were back at Rockfield Studios, which is our favourite studio. Stuart seemed to be in good form and good shape. We were all into the songs that we put together for that. We were all enjoying the recording. And then when we get to the mixing stage, by this time Stuart sort of wasn't really into mixing. Once it had been recorded, he'd feel as though there was a job done. It was up to the producers and whoever else was interested to do that. So at this point in time, he'd moved himself to Nashville at this time, and on this occasion he went back to Nashville. We carried on mixing, but we were informed by one of the studio cleaners that Stuart's room was a shrine to alcohol.
Right.
We didn't think he was drinking, but the room was full of bottles, beer cans, all sorts of things. So we realised, he was in bad shape. Sometime later, we were contacted by somebody who obviously saw Stuart at Gatwick when he was going back home on that occasion, saying that he'd passed out on a table with bottles of alcohol, glasses and drink at Gatwick Airport. So we knew that he was in a bad state by that time.
Right.
So, but when he came back, we tried to have a discussion about it with him. Oh, thank you. We tried to have a discussion with him about what's going on, and the end was like, I'm coming to myself. So the end was nigh on that score, and I was more intent that he just go and get himself fixed and set up. But the final crack for me was when we were just about to, when we released Fragile Thing. We all got really excited about it. We got Eddie Reader to come sort of do some female vocals on it and stuff. And we were all really excited about it as a single because it was, to me, it was Radio 2 fodder. And, we needed that sort of exposure to sort of climb back to where we were and all the ground that we'd lost over the intervening years. And then we had a catastrophe with, we were doing a book signing in Glasgow at Tower Records, and we were told while we were actually signing records that chart organisation who put the charts together had banned one of the you have to excuse me. My medications makes me quite.
Oh, that's all right.
Yes, no, it's the format of the CD. We had it was like not just your ordinary jewel case. It was one of these extended formats that you open it up, you get a CD, you get something in the box, blah blah blah. All the sort of tricks that they used to try to do to sell records back in those days.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, the chart company said that it was illegal packaging, and they subsequently sort of had to strike off the corresponding sales as to what's going on. Anyways, but when we were talking about that, it hit hard. It was devastating. So it's basically, from looking at going into the top 40 that week, it was sort of demoted to just barely number 70.
Yeah, really bad timing as well.
It's had a really bad effect on them, particularly Stuart, because again, after that period of touring and blah blah blah, disappeared. And I think we were all hit hard, but him probably more than us. And the end was on the cards then.
Yeah. Once you found out, I mean, obviously, we know what happened to Stuart, and Big Country carried on, didn't it? Were you tempted at that point just to say, let's just stop?
Well, just before the end of that tour, I had a sort of a bit of a summit meeting with Stuart. We were in Europe, I think we were in Germany at the time, and I sort of went to his room in the hotel and just sort of said, I had a heart-to-heart with him basically, and I said, look, I'm not into doing this anymore. You're obviously in a complete and utter mess. You need to go and get yourself sorted out. And I'm quite happy to sort of, even if it means me leaving the band, so you stop. That's what I'm willing to do, because, this is not good. You're not in a good place. So basically, after that tour, to all intents and purposes, I'd left the band. But it wasn't something that I was going to publicise or make an announcement. And I never saw Stuart again until we were invited to play at a concert in Malaysia, which corresponded with the Grand Prix out there at the time. And so and it was quite a good money maker, and because we were all getting a bit skint by that time. When we all arrived in Kuala Lumpur, we thought, well, it's a money gig, let's do this and let's sort of see where we go. But basically, Stuart somehow got himself lost because he was drunk. He got himself lost on the aircraft and ended up in Japan rather than Kuala Lumpur. Don't ask me how, but he ended up in the wrong place. By the time we got to Kuala Lumpur, we'd obviously known that he'd been heavily drinking and he was in a mess. And the subsequent gig, to me, was a complete and utter embarrassment. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know what he was doing. He was completely screwed. So when we left Malaysia, I didn't see him again.
No.
Yeah. Sorry, it's still.
Yeah.
It hurts.
I can understand. Since Big Country, you've worked on a lot of solo projects, haven't you?
Yes.
And I've listened to it. So it's a really rocky sound, isn't it? So do you think you're just going back to your roots with that, really?
No, I was just doing what I wanted to do. I've been writing songs with Stuart, without Stuart, on my own, all the way through that period. The last songwriting episode that Stuart and I had probably was when we did tracks like God's Great Mistake and stuff. We had sort of good times writing sort of that sort of stuff for that album. But I started doing my stuff when the things were going very wrong somewhere around 1997, 98, 99. I had a sort of personal upset because my wife was suffering from ME and so was my daughter. And I started writing a lot of stuff for my own, and I was really enjoying it. But I didn't really want to have a solo ambition. I started my own record company in Cornwall to help young bands, and I released a couple of albums on my label, as well as other things that I was getting involved with.